Chapter 69, the Jubilee, Part 3, Leviticus 25, 25 to 34. If my brother be waxen poor, and hath sold away some of his possession, and if any of his kin come to redeem it, then shall he redeem that which his brother sold. And if the men have none to redeem it, and himself be able to redeem it, then let him count the years of the sale thereof, and restore the overplus unto the man to whom he sold it, that he may return unto his possession. But if he be not able to restore it to him, then that which is sold shall remain in the land of him that hath brought it until the year of the Jubilee, and in the Jubilee it shall go out, and he shall return unto his possession. And if a man sell a dwelling house in a walled city, then he may redeem it within a whole year after it is sold. Within the full year may he redeem it. And if it be not redeemed within the space of a full year, then that house that is in the walled city shall be established for ever to him that brought it throughout his generations. It shall not go out in the Jubilee. But the houses of the villages which have no wall round about them shall be counted as the fields of the country. They may be redeemed, and they shall go out in the Jubilee. Notwithstanding the cities of the Levites and the houses of the cities of their possession may the Levites redeem at any time. And if a man purchase of the Levites, then the house that was sold, and the city of his possession shall go out in the year of the Jubilee. For the houses of the cities of the Levites are their possession among the children of Israel. But the fields of the suburbs of their cities may not be sold, for it is their perpetual possession. Leviticus 25, 25 to 34. A brief survey of the specific meaning of these rules is necessary before going further. Land was sold or leased at a price for the years remaining to the next time of release, so that the value was calculated in terms of the time remaining. If, because of poverty, a man was compelled to sell his land, his closest kinsmen had to redeem the land for him. This meant that members of a family had an obligation to relieve distress within the family, to prevent the loss of land, and also various forms of need. If no relative could redeem the land, and a little later the man himself was able to do so, the price of redemption was calculated in terms of the years remaining until the release or Jubilee. A house within a walled town, that is, in a city, could only be redeemed within the first year. Urban properties were not subject to Jubilee. Houses in open, unwalled villages were properly a part of the rural areas and could be redeemed and did revert to the original family in the Jubilee. The urban exception was the house and cities of the Levites. These were their permanent heritage from the Lord for His purposes. This law includes the pasture of Levitical cities. They could never be sold. Numbers 35 to following. Let us consider first the possession of the Levites. The Levites included the priests or clergy, but they also included a variety of other functions, all religious and tied to God. They were the instructors of Israel, the scribes, the experts on law who interpreted the law for the courts, and so on. They were the teachers and scholars of Israel. Their cities were throughout the land, strategically located to give every area a center of learning and a radiating influence. The tribe of Levi was given no farmland, but it was given cities, and it was the normal channel through which tithes were distributed, of which 1/10 or 100th of a man's income went to the priests for worship. Numbers 18, 26 to 32. The meaning is thus clear. God's law protects godly scholarship. More than theologians are indicated here. Christian schools and their staffs, men in various fields of learning who have a biblical faith and perspective, and so on, all form a clerisy whom God's law requires us to protect and support. The medieval era was right in seeing the support of scholarship as a religious necessity, but wrong in requiring it to be a part of the church and its clergy. The reference to the kinsman redeemer is an important one. It is a major strand of biblical faith. Jesus Christ is, by his incarnation, one of us and our kinsman redeemer. The kinsman redeemer redeems the land, frees his kin from slavery, and, on occasion, as with Boaz and Ruth, marries a widow to redeem her and her property for his people and posterity. The distinction made between urban and rural properties is important. Both must observe the Jubilee as well as the Sabbath years, but the city is exempt from the restoration of properties. The countryside is thus made an area of stability, and the city an area of change. Knight cites a proverb: "Banks and churches never sell." While this is no longer true as it once was, it still reminds us that once upon a time certain constants remained. God's law stipulates his constants, while man posits himself as the constant, with all else variable in terms of his will. Hence the meaning of the Sabbath year and Jubilee, however valuable to man and the land, must be sought in God's purpose. Ulla said of this: "The year of Jubilee, by which the sabbatic cycle is completed, while involving the idea of the Sabbath year, has, moreover, its own specific import in the idea of release, and of the reinstatement of the theocracy in its original and divinely appointed order, in which all were, as the servants of God, to be free, and each was to be assured of his earthly maintenance, by being restored to the enjoyment of the inheritance allotted to his family for this purpose. The God who once redeemed the people from Egypt and acquired them as his possession here appears again as a redeemer, to restore the bondsman his personal freedom, and to re-endow the poor with the share allotted him in the inheritance of his people. For among the covenant people no poor should properly have been found, Deuteronomy 15:4, and the fruits of a consistent carrying out of the law of the year of Jubilee would at least have been that a proletariat could not have been found in Israel. Before such a year of grace, however, could appear, transgressions must have been pardoned, hence the year of Jubilee was to be proclaimed on the Day of Atonement. After the Babylonian captivity with Nehemiah, the Sabbath years were restored, but we have no information on the Jubilee. It does seem that, by the time of our Lord at least, there was no Jubilee. However, before the fall of Jerusalem, rulers like Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar freed the Jews from taxes in sabbatical years. A strange and fallacious attempts at compliance with the sabbatical and Jubilee laws exist among some in Israel today, namely to lease the land to Muslims, and Muslims only, for 2 years. We do not know whether or not the Jubilee was observed by the early church or during the very early medieval era. It was, we know, later spiritualized and observed in an ecclesiastical form at least as early as 1300, when Pope Boniface VIII proclaimed the Jubilee as a time of pilgrimage and grace and of indulgences. In time, this Jubilee was held every 25 years. We should not rule out the possibility of Jubilee celebrations in terms of God's law in Christendom's past. After all, the very prevalent practice of gleaning in America has had no scholarly notice, and much important on it is being lost. The interest of historians has not been in God's law. In another sphere, indirect attention is being given to the Jubilee. Nikolai Kondratiev, a Russian economist of the early years of the 20th century, set out to prove the fallacy of capitalistic economies. He discovered a 50 to 60-year cycle of prosperity and depression, the average cycle being 54 years. The Kondratiev wave theory held that human action could not affect this cycle, which is a natural phenomenon. The gains made during periods of prosperity are wiped out by inevitable collapse. Kondratiev's theory has had no small opposition. His data is sound. Historically, the cycles have occurred. The problem is the explanation. Are they natural phenomena, inescapable for man? Such a conclusion militates against man's humanism, and Stalin found Kondratiev's opinions traitorous. Many have held that, while the cycles have been true of the past, now the state's fine-tuning of the economy will prevent their recurrence. Such men view Kondratiev's work as an historical account of things past, rather than as a binding law for the present. Current economic events are confirming Kondratiev's theory. The issue is very well stated on naturalistic terms by Kirkland. The primary reason the Kondratiev wave theory is so difficult for academics to accept is that its premises are counter to accepted economic logic. Even in their most basic courses, economists are taught to solve scientific questions by sequential reasoning, that is, by manipulating known economic and financial variables in a logical manner until desired results are determined. The Kondratiev wave theory takes an entirely opposite tack, stating that the end result is already known and that the economic and financial variables interacting to achieve that final result are largely irrelevant in determining the outcome. At its heart, the issue is a religious one. Kondratiev held to a naturalistic economic determinism, and his data seem to confirm his belief. Other economists hold to a humanistic determinism, that is, either man or the state determines the economy, for better or for worse. It is noteworthy that Kirkland finds one instance in past history of an awareness of this cycle, the Levitical law of Jubilee. This places a brake on accumulated debt, on inflation, and on the continuing expansion of credit. By this means, the cycle was controlled and disaster prevented. We can go further and say that the Sabbath years and the Jubilee worked together to prevent the boom and bust cycle from occurring. They blocked long-term debt, and they militated against inflation and credit expansion. With the observance of Sabbaths and Jubilees, the economy then moves not in terms of man's will, but in terms of God's law. Modern economics, whether conservative, liberal, or radical, insists that human action can determine economics. The law of God tells us that no less than the light of the sun he created dominates the physical life of man, so too his laws govern man's economic life and all things else. In every sphere, without exception, it is always true that the wages of sin is death, Romans 6:23. Sin, moreover, is very plainly defined for us. It is the transgression of the law of God, 1 John 3:4.